Hello, BookTube, and welcome to another episode of Last Week in BookTube. Sorry, that sounds so cheesy. For those of you who might be new to the channel, and I noticed that there are some of you, we are slowly but steadily creeping towards 3,000 subscribers. This is a segment I do every week where I look back on my week's viewing on BookTube and compile a list of things that were highlights, things I want you to see, or at least make sure I tell you about. It's not meant to be comprehensive at all. it's a small fraction of what I watch. It's also a small fraction of what I liked. But I wanted to single out these things. Of course, I start off with some general things. And since we're doing Last Week in BookTube at the turning of a month, you can probably see one of those general things coming, which is that 95% of the viewing that I did on BookTube last week has been April wrap-ups and May TBRs. Which are great fun. There's no possibility of really including them here. They're mainly channel updates, but they're great fun. It's great fun to watch that and to watch people assess what they do, especially since I know that kind of numerical assessment and where am I and what am I looking forward to is a big feature on Goodreads, and maybe those videos would stand out a little less for me if I were more present on Goodreads. I keep meaning to be more present on Goodreads. I just haven't found a way to do it. I just recently figured out what to do about Bookstagram, but I haven't yet done that. That penny hasn't dropped with Goodreads. And I made a video of my own, a May TBR BY, a list of recommendations of May books for you. I don't really do a traditional April wrap-up or a traditional May TBR, and I don't see how I could. I read 96 books in the month of April, and I plan on beating that in May. And that's not that kind of number isn't workable for a video. And it also, April wrap-ups and May TBRs aren't really workable for Last Week in BookTube either. Although if you did one of them, you can rest assured I probably watched it and liked it. Another big thing on the general category was Dewey's 24-hour readathon. Which, again, always looks like fun. I watch a lot of people doing updates about it. Again, it doesn't really apply to me. It wouldn't be much of a point to getting involved. But I love to watch it. And in outside of BookTube, but definitely book related, there was a big story in the news. The Association of American Publishers broke down a statistical poll, a study that they did about readership, in the last quarter, and it was snatched up by the tiny portion of the mainstream media that cares at all about books and almost universally misrepresented. And so a little warning I want to make sure to give you in case no one's ever given it to you, which is that if you read a story in the mainstream news, on your news feed, on your tablet, or in a newspaper that references a study, you can pretty much be assured that its references will be wrong, that it's skewing what the study actually says in favor of making headlines and a readable narrative, when studies don't care about that. They're just presenting data. So on this particular subject, this study by the Association of American Publishers and its UK counterpart, you really have to just, if you're looking at a news report online, you really just have to click through to the study itself and read. The headlines dealing with this study were that ebooks sales are tanking, that traditional printed book sales are on the rise, that the ebook fad seems to be over, and of course the study says nothing like that. Ebook sales went up. They just went up by a smaller growth curve, and sales of everything were down except for freak incidents, freak indicators that were skewing the numbers, and anybody could tell what those are. Print books went up a significant proportion because of children's book sales, things that are categorized as children's book sales. And if you think back to the period over which the survey covers, you will see that it covers not only this weird exploding fad of adult coloring books, which is, certainly looks like a lot of fun, but I don't want to hear a word from any of you who do that sort of thing that you don't have enough time to read. Okay. But not only that, there was also, in that period covered by that survey, there was a book that came out that had a certain author's name on the cover. What was that author's name? I'm having a tough time. I'm kind of blanking on it. Oh, that's right. J.K. Rowling. So you have to take the numbers with a grain of salt. But if you do read the study and you do parse it correctly instead of with purple prose in mind, it definitely comes to a slowing down of people's interest in reading ebooks. The format of ebooks, the bloom seems to have gone off the rose for it, and that's interesting to me. And I can't help but lay the problems, the fault, if there is any, directly at the feet of the publishing industry, who could have made ebooks work if they'd wanted to. Instead, they did everything possible to hurt the growth of the process. Those of you might remember, well, you're all young enough to remember when ebooks first started. They were cheap. No matter what they were cheap. If there was a new Tom Clancy, it was $5 for the ebook, where it was $30 for the hardcover, the printed hardcover. And publishers immediately started changing that. They immediately started charging you lots of money for ebooks, even though ebooks are much less expensive to produce and distribute. And if you're thinking about leaving a comment telling me that ebooks are actually more expensive or as expensive to produce and distribute, kindly don't. Okay? I actually know a lot more about this subject than you do. And that is a line that the publishing industry put forward. It's a lie. But not only that, it's not only that ebooks became expensive, even though you don't own the thing. You're not actually buying it. You're just paying the right to lease it, which ought to keep the price down right there, because it's not even your possession. It can be taken from you at any minute and you can't lend it or resell it. It's not only that, it's also that the publishing industry hasn't yet, by and large, there are little pockets here and there, but the mainstream publishing industry, by and large, has been very lazy and unimaginative about ebooks. They haven't seized on any of the potential that the medium provides. So it's not surprising to me that your average consumer would say, well, I want this new book. It would be convenient for me to have an electronic book because my phone is always with me. I could read it on my phone. But the electronic book is only $5 less expensive than the hardcover, and the hardcover is mine. I own it. I can do anything I want with it. It's understandable to me that someone in that situation might start just deciding, no, I tried ebooks. I gave it a try, and it's not for me. So I'll be interested to know what the studies say in a year. That will be fascinating. And then there were reviews. There were book reviews. I know that on BookTube, they tend to get lower viewer count in the short run, probably because your subscribers will look at the title. They'll realize immediately, oh, this is a review of book X, and they'll decide whether or not to watch the video based on whether or not they're interested in the book, which is wrong. That's the wrong way to do things. The point is that you're interested in the channel. You're interested in the person. Even if they're reviewing a book you're not interested in, you're interested in them. So you watch what they do. but I do anyway, because I review books. So there were 4 that I want to point out this week that were really good. The first one was a classic. YesMissJane reviewed The Shores of Women by Pamela Sargent. Great to see that sort of thing get reviewed. And there was another classic too. Lil's Vintage World did a review of Sad Cypress by Agatha Christie, and she did a wonderful job. And then there were 2 that were much more recent books. A Scientist Reads reviewed Nothing to Envy, a book about life in North Korea that I only read about 100 pages of it. I read 100 pages of it sitting on a stool at the Boston Globe, I think, and it was just brutally grim. I don't think I could have read all the way to the end. Just an open air prison. Horrible circumstance to live in, and also horrible the way some of the people giving their oral histories of living there are rationalizing, and you can see what they're doing. You can see they're rationalizing. And also Neil Griffiths did a review of Compass, in the English language translation of Compass by Mathias Enard, who's great. He's fantastic. So, and leave it to Neil Griffiths to find the guy and to say that he's great, and also to rank this book slightly lower than a great book that he'd previously written. I actually agree with that judgment, but the thing that really got me going was a prefacing comment that he made. Wasn't part of his actual review, about Joseph Heller and about how we know him for Catch-22, but he's actually written better books. Neil Griffiths mentions one of them. I could mention a couple of others. Once the limelight was off him, he did write better books, and that's interesting when it comes to Enard, because it's interesting for any author. You look at authors, whether they're living or dead, and you see what they're best known for, and in many cases, it's not their best work, and that's fascinating. So those 4 reviews, very much worth your time to watch. And then there were a couple of general things. There was Katie at Books and Things did a head-to-head matchup of J.K. Rowling versus Charles Dickens, which is the sort of thing that would pretty much only ever happen on her channel. And it was fascinating. I have very little in the way of reverence for either of those authors, and a bit of annoyance with both of them, because I think she certainly didn't make this point. I think both of them are hysterically overrated, even in their own genres, even for what they do by their readership. But it was fascinating to see them go head to head like that. And Jakob Tanner did he has a video called "Where to Start," and he picked Raymond Chandler, who's one of his favorite authors and also one of my favorite modern American authors, and is underrated. I really do believe that I agree with Jacob's video that he's underrated in terms of how good he is. And the Where to Start video is just perfect. It gives you the lay of the land and what to do with this author if you don't know anything about him. I think I've mentioned on this channel before his fantastic essay, "The Simple Art of Murder." I would argue that's a great place to start, but it doesn't, of course, touch on his fiction, which is the glory of what he did. So, and Michael at Knowledge Lost did a video called "Will I Ever Be Well Read?" That's fascinating. You really have to go and watch it, especially if you've asked that question yourself. He surveys the problem of the vast corpus of world literature and the limited amount of time, limited not just by human mortality, but also by job and work and family and all sorts of other commitments. And in his video, I mean, I loved it, but I do disagree with it. He kind of sort of seeded the ground. He kind of sort of said, well, considering how much of stuff there is out there, it's not really possible. It's a never-ending process. It was the kind of thing he said over and over again, and that's not actually true. And the problem is a mix-up in terminology, I think, in his video between well-read and widely read. Of course, you can always be more widely read than you are. That goes without saying, and that is a never-ending process, because there are literatures in whole countries' history that haven't been translated. So they're locked away from you until you learn that language. That goes on, and also the literature of your own language grows with every year, as I know perfectly well. Hundreds of thousands of books are published every year in English, and of those hundreds of thousands of books, probably 200 or 300 are books that are actually really, really good, well worth being remembered for hundreds of years. And of those 200 or 300, there are probably 100, maybe 80 that are brilliant. That part is never ending, but that's widely read. Well read is actually a discrete process, and it isn't impossible to do. It takes time. If you devote time to it, it's been my experience, it takes about a year to read the absolute fundamental classics of Western literature. Confining yourself to Western literature here, although as the list goes on, as you get up into the halfway point in your year, it's easy to branch out to a few other well-known international classics. But in terms of being well-read, that means that you cover the basics. That means that you are familiar with the lingua franca of the literary world, the literary landscape. And that's actually a discrete process. As an old friend of mine used to say, the ancient world is not going anywhere. So, you know, if you are worried about being well read as opposed to widely read, if you want to know that lingua franca, it's not impossible at all. It doesn't even take a lot of time, considering how much time you might have to live. You start with the Bible and Homer. You read the Epic of Gilgamesh. You read a little about them. Then you move on to the Greek tragedians, the Greek historians, the Roman historians, the Roman epic poets, the Roman lyric poets. It's a list of maybe 40, 50, 60 works. 40 or 50, 60 authors. It's not impossible to do. It takes about a year. So, but anyway, go and watch the video and leave comments about. He asked for comments. Leave comments what you think of the whole process and whether or not it bothers you, because there is a sense in which it doesn't matter at all, right? If you don't care how well read or how widely read you are, that's absolutely fine. I should hasten to add that's absolutely fine. I was only talking about it in terms of if you want those things. If you don't, it doesn't lessen at all how passionate or involved a reader you are. Not in the slightest. You could read urban fantasy and only that, and still be a reader who could talk my ear off all night long, and I'd be happy to listen. It's only the segment of readers who want that. I love the video, but I want to stress it's not impossible. It can be done. And I, of course, would advocate that you do it. It doesn't even have to be done exclusively. You could do one book a week plus your normal reading. You'll still get it done in very little time, comparatively speaking, and it's worth it. It will add a rock-solid basement floor to everything you read, since all literature is linear. So all Western literature grew from these things, whether it knows it or not. But anyway, that was all of the other section, except for, if I may allow just a brief observation. Hasn't BookTube been nice and peaceful without that horrid Adam person from Memento Mori making videos? Hasn't it been nice and peaceful without him showing up in your video feed and waving things at you? and then I guess BookTube's loss is Thailand's loss. But well, I want to wrap up with something that I do on these things, a bit of extracurricular viewing. Some of you have said you don't mind that I do. And the one I'm picking this week is an oldie but a goodie. I actually was reminded of it by the start of a new season of Doctor Who. And it's a great sequence from a few years ago with the Matt Smith Doctor, where he takes Vincent van Gogh to the Musée d'Orsay and shows him the room of his own paintings and talks with a curator about him while he's listening. And it's really effective. It suffers from the same problem that has afflicted the entire relaunch of the entire Stephen Moffat relaunch of Doctor Who, from Christopher Eccleston all the way to the present. It affected every single part of it in every single episode of every single season, every Doctor, every companion, everything. And it can be summed up in one word: histrionics. Everyone in the Stephen Moffat Who universe talks in histrionics all the time. And that gets a little wearying. And it also has the very depressing side effect of making good actors bad. It doesn't matter that Matt Smith couldn't act his way out of a wet paper bag. And it doesn't matter that the show often employs noticeably bad actors. It also employs lots of noticeably good actors, and they're still bad, because the one thing that will kill a good actor's performance is histrionics. There's no way to make histrionics anything other than shrill. So for me, it gets a little bit wearying to watch. The histrionics is the opposite of whimsy, and the whimsy element was the thing I liked about Doctor Who when I was watching adoringly the Fourth Doctor. But even so, in this particular case, as in many scenes that I could pick from the Moffat era, the histrionics is made to work. So that's a scene that I recommend, and I'll link it down below. I'll link all of these things down below. Of course, uh, as 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 always in Last Week in BookTube, my mentions of these channels are also wholehearted recommendations of them. You should not just go and watch; you should also go and subscribe. And that's it for now, and I'll see you soon, BookTube. Thank you.